But anyway, I went with this lady up in, this is interesting. Dave Cox and I, we both went, he had a girlfriend up in Skamania, and I had one up in Skamania, and we used to hitchhike up to Skamania to our girlfriends. And in fact, he actually married his girlfriend. And about 5 years ago, I have some knowledge through David Cox, that she actually lived in California, and one Sunday evening, I got a telephone call about 7 o'clock at night, and my ex-girlfriend, I've been married by the way for 59 years, and anyway,
glad that you added that.
I had to have it. She's not here anyway. But anyway, this is kind of interesting. But anyway, she actually called me and wanted to know how I was doing and everything. And it's kind of cool. She had come up to see some of her folks up there. This is interesting. Her name was Lena. And the wife, I got out of the service, the Navy, after my 4-year hitchhike. And 2 months later, I met my wife down at Needers. And I introduced her, my wife, as Loretta.
Uh-oh.
And she has never forgotten that after 59 years. You know, it's a crazy world, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's a crazy world.
Boy, you just don't get to live anything down, do you?
Well, this is a story about Carl Nagel. You know, he was mostly known for being the football coach. This is a baseball story, but he was also a baseball coach. And my class was the class of '66. And our junior year, one of my best friends and I, we were playing baseball for Carl. And we were having batting practice out here. Of course, in the spring in the Northwest, it's always cold and wet. And Gary was up to bat, and he swings, he hits it on the end of the bat. Well, whenever you hit it on the end of the bat, handshakes, you know, well, pop the finger out of joint. And Gary's going like this, he's, you know, and I looked at it, and I could see it was popped out, you know, and he was in pain, and Carl comes over, and Carl says, "What's the matter, Gary?" I popped my finger out, so Carl grabs a hold of his hand like this and gently puts it up, and then quietly he reaches with the other hand and yanks on the finger and pops it in. And then Carl says, "It'll be okay now, and you're still up." So, but that's the way Carl was. He didn't believe anybody had any pain, I guess. But anyway, that's my...
Oh, tell me your story. I'm Nancy are you on?
I am.
I'm Nancy Hopkins. I should have graduated in '65, but I didn't. But I'm here and I love Washougal. And we are a 4-generation family. And I have this little scar on my hand. I went up on the hill. I did not smoke at the time. I was a freshman. It was homecoming day. And I went up on the hill where the smokers were, and this kid, Jerry Osborne, had a knife out. I did not know it. And I turned around and he stabbed me in the hand. And Mr. Jurgens took me to the doctor, got my hand stitched up, dropped me at my grandma's, and I went to the homecoming game, which I'm sure Jerry was there as well. I don't think anybody ever really got me in trouble. So how is that for a story to get stabbed?
That's just...
My aunt, Gudrun Jimtigar, and she used to write on the blackboard the first day of school her name, and then she would ask the class what is a valuable gem, and so, or valuable rock, it would be a gem, and then what is a British drink, and she'd draw a little teacup, and that would be tea, and then for guard it was, you know, she had a picture of like a British guard, and so then it would be gem tea guard, so that the kids would know how to say her name and say her name. So that's it.
Thank you. Tell me.
I'm Al I'm a Jemtigard lad. My father was Marvin Jemtigard, and he graduated in 1930. Went to Bell Center School, and there were a lot of Mount Pleasant kids who came down to Washougal High School. And the oldest kid drove the touring car, which was their school bus. And my dad was the oldest kid, so he drove these Mount Pleasant kids down to the high school, and he was the oldest kid from Mount Pleasant. And he wasn't a very good driver when he was older, so I just can only imagine what kind of driver he was when he was young.
We actually have a picture at Mount Pleasant of that touring car.
Is it in the high school? Somebody told me that.
there she is. Okay, way in the back. Okay. I'm going to start moving them forward.
seats. We have brought some seats over here. There's seats in the back. If you'd like to stand, that is also okay. I think I'll begin by quoting a gentleman who I see at most of our basketball games and football games, Forest Seagrades. But when he walked in, said, "This is a nice event." And it is a nice event. This is so amazing to see so many people, to see graduates, staff members, former staff members, our school board members, past school board members, current teachers, students, and staff mingling. It's wonderful. So thank you for being here. I want to welcome you back, many of you, to Washougal High School. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Aaron Hansen. I have the privilege and honor to be the principal here. And it's a job that I truly enjoy. And it's events like this that make it so worthwhile. I think it's really important to let you know that I had absolutely nothing to do with this event. That there are 4 ladies that really put this together. And so if they would actually come forward, Pam Clark, Ann Gendro, Amanda Clackner, and Renee Carroll. If you could please come up here, please. So it's after school, the kids, they don't all leave. They like to mingle in the senior lounge. And it was a couple weeks ago. We had an event we were setting up for, and there was all these tables full of students with their cell phones out, talking, and then a group of ladies who were right in there with them, taking notes and talking about the event. And so it was classic. So again, please thank them for creating this opportunity for us.
Thank you.
A few housekeeping items. Restrooms, there are restroom signs, so if you use your restroom, you go that direction, you'll see the signs, and it will lead you to the restrooms. If you did not sign in, we really want you to sign in, so here in the main entrance, please sign in if you didn't do so. I want to thank our ex-tech under the direction of Jen Mahoney, so please thank our ex-tech. They are very talented group. I want to thank our class, I believe it was relationships, cooked up these, our little desserts. And so that was under the direction of Mary Walker. So thank you, relationships, as well as students who were handing those out. Thank you. Is Mary here, by the way, Mary Walker? Where is Mary? She's here. Okay. We'll recognize her later. I think that's it for the items I need you to bring up, except for one thing, is other things that I really enjoy about this job, I got to do today. And I went up to Timberline High School where I was with several other educators as we were recognized by the state of Washington for the first time with the 2013 Washington Achievement Award for High Progress. So to our staff and our students, congratulations. As you know, this is a wonderful high school, this is a wonderful city, and this is a wonderful event. And as I read some of the stories from the Columbian and heard some of the stories, and I've heard some stories from you, it's kind of a crazy place too every once in a while. Some of those stories in the Columbian. But I am proud to be the principal here, and thankful that you're here. We have a wonderful opportunity to listen to our Master of Ceremonies. Is he up here with me? Yes, he is. So, Wayne Haverly is here, and it's an honor to introduce him to you. Wayne graduated the class of 1982. Oh yeah. Okay. He's a product of the Ed Ponce Revolutionary Television Tech Program here at Washougal High School, and he was telling a little bit about that Ed started that program on his own. With Ponce as a mentor, Wayne began gaining experience while students at Eastern Washington University. Bill Meeks. There you go. Yes. And his senior year, he landed a full-time reporter anchor job at KHQ in Spokane. From there, he went to Orlando, Seattle, and in 2007, he came back home to KGW News Channel 8 in Portland. Wayne's standard of excellence has been recognized with several Emmy wins and more than 20 nominations, as well as 2 national awards for investigative reporting. Please help me in welcoming Wayne Haverly.
Thank you very much. I just found out that your principal and I, we just crossed paths almost at Eastern Washington University. I think he started the year I finished, but I know a lot of the same people there are big Eagles fans as well as Washougal High School fans, so it's great to see that in a small town. I want to talk a little bit about my experience here at Washougal High School and just how great it was. It really did set up my career in so many ways. He talked a little bit about Ed Ponce's television tech program, and for those of you who are not aware of who Ed Ponce is, Still lives in town, great guy. He worked in Hollywood, NBC Hollywood, for about 20 years, and he worked on some of the most classic shows when television was just started, you know, everything from Jack Benny to Jerry Lewis, Bob Hope Show. He did all of these shows, and he retired early, lots of land out here in Washougal, and put together this really neat program in high school at the time, in the late 70s and 80s. And you have to remember back then, we didn't have DVD players, we didn't even have VHS players at that time. You know, it was real early in television, so it was a really big deal to have a studio set up in the high school, working cameras, tape machines. They were big 2-inch machines, maybe 1 inch, but they were very large machines. And so everybody that was picked for this class, it was a 2-hour class, if I remember right. We got to get exposed to a little bit of everything, from the technical side of things, to directing, to producing, to talent. So I did that for 2 years in the high school, and that's one of the reasons I had a pretty easy time when I went to college, because I was a little ahead of the game in that particular area. So that was always very special to me. And I was just talking with my wife Julie, who also went to school here, class of '82. And we were talking about what made Washougal High School so special. And I think it was the individualism that we were able to achieve here through some of the great teachers and administrators that we had at the time. We were trying to think of just one teacher that we wouldn't be comfortable going to after class to talk to get more information about something that we were studying, or just to be a friend, to be a mentor. Couldn't think of a single one. It was just a great place to go to school during those years. So, Washougal High School has always got a real soft spot in my heart. So, just want to thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this celebration today. So, now, I guess we're going to move on to some introductions, very special introductions. So when I mention these names, I'd like everybody to stand up, and then we will recognize them. First off, former Washougal School District and Washougal High School administrators. Would you all please stand? There they are. And also former and current Washougal High School staff. Would you please rise? Here. All right, former Washougal School District board members, would you please stand? And now let's talk about the current school board members. First, the president, Lane Peterson. There he is. Vice President, Ron Yates. Karen Rubino, the legislative representative. She is. And Elaine Farmer. All right, thank you so much for being here and the impact that you've all had on Washougal High School. Now we have a segment here about some of the families that deserve some special recognition as we look back all these years. And there are some families that the committee did some research and they discovered, and this is pretty impressive. There are some families here that go back 5 generations of graduates at Washougal High School. That's saying something, 5 generations. And the first family that we're going to talk about, they have connections to Washougal schools as far back as the 1890s with Emery and Ida Wanlin Stevenson. They attended Washougal's Cape Horn School. This family has gone on to have dozens of Washougal High School graduates. The first was in 1936. Family members continued to graduate in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and then into the 1980s and 1990s. The most recent grads went through school more than 100 years after their great-grandparents did. And we're talking here about Carrie and Caitlin Johnson, class of 2013. Pretty impressive. You know what? They've got another the school district. So I'd like to ask everybody in the family, please stand up right now. And let's give them a round of applause. So there. All right, now the next family also boasts 5 generations of students, and the first is Flora Cox Newman, a proud grad from the year 1938. The family has had a number of grads in the early 60s, the late 70s, 2000, and now River and Rose Pike, great-great-grandchildren of Mrs. Newman. They're attending school right now in Washougal. So would you please stand and be recognized today? So those are just some of the families that the committee found that go back 5 generations. But hey, you're all here now, so we may have missed some families here. So is there any other family that you know of here that has been have graduates here at the school at least 5 generations? Is there anybody here? Okay, well I bet you I can go back 4 generations. my own family goes back 4 generations, so. That is terrific. In fact, I have a little letter from one of the graduates from back in the day here at the high school. And this is from someone who actually went to the old high school, which used to be down in the building that was Columbia. I think it's a church now. But she was also the first graduate in the first class of this school before the remodel. And actually, this remodel was great. I know I'm about 20 years late, but it's my first time in here. It's terrific. So let me read you this letter. My first memory of WHS was as a grade school student when we were in recess. Our big event of the day was when those big high school students walked through our playground on their way to lunch in the Hathaway cafeteria. Apparently that's where they ate lunch back in the day. They walked from the high school on B Street up and across the railroad tracks and E Street to get their lunches. We grade school kids would gather and gaze in awe, wondering what it would be like to be old enough to go to high school. Well, the class of 58 was the first class to graduate from Washougal High School here on 39th. I recall vividly helping pack books and stack chairs before the Christmas break of 57 when we returned. In January of 58, we helped carry the packed items and chairs to trucks, and we hauled it all to the new school. Mr. Pettyjohn and Mr. Nagel came as football coaches in 1957. I'll never forget the first day of school and these 2 giants walking down the hall together. They could hush the halls just by their presence. Of course, they went on to quickly rebuild the team here in Washougal and become tremendously successful in the Tri-Coat League at the time. I remember homecomings. Each class built a float with a trailer, chicken wire, and napkins donated by Crown Zellenbeck. And on the weekend of homecoming, the floats left the high school with the marching band and they cruised through downtown Washougal. Can you imagine that? Each float had the class princess and the 2 members of the court on board. And on Friday night, the game was held on the football field. It was located on B Street, directly across the street from the old high school. I think that was our playground in 4th grade. That was the high school back then. On Saturday, the dance was held in the Hathaway gym, again decorated with chicken wire and those napkins courtesy Crown Zellenbeck. Graduation was held here at the new high school in the gym. Mr. Terrell, the principal, Mr. Fishback Sr. presided, and I think I had 58 students graduate this year. And this is from my mom. She could not be here today. She's visiting her grandkids in Georgia. She wanted to be here very much. So, all right. So we have some guest speakers here, and I'm really excited about this next one. This is a guy who definitely knows a little bit about the town and the high school. It's my pleasure to announce this. The first guest that we have here is Vernon Campen, class of 1931. He has the distinction of being WHS's oldest alumni. Mr. Campen was recently featured in a Columbian article, and it would be an honor for me to have him join me up here on the stage. So a couple of questions for you. I know, wow, things have probably changed a little bit here at the high school from back in the day. What year did you graduate? 38? 1931. What's your most vivid memory about Washougal High School back in 1931?
That's where, well, exactly during the worst of the Depression, kind of a dumb time to graduate. That was 25 of us, as even as you get an uneven number, that was 25. One more girl than one boy. She died the day after she graduated, and I never even knew she was sick. I don't know. Different world.
Where was the high school located in 1931? Where was it at in town?
Right from the time when I moved it 2 or 3 times there, just really
Yeah, so was it down there kind of closer to where Hathaway School is now?
Yeah, you got that right.
Down in that area. Okay, well thank you so much. We appreciate it. It's great. How old are you now, Vernon? You hit 100, didn't you?
101.
What's that?
There was 25 of us like that. I'm on my lap.
Yeah, that is impressive. You look great. Thank you so much for sharing some of those memories with us. Appreciate that. All right. Who do we have next? Okay, our second guest is from the class of 1938. And as you just saw, Mrs. Newman is a part of a large family here at WHS of graduates, and I'm sure she has plenty of stories to tell. So let's talk to Flora Cox Newman. Hi, Flora. How are you? Good. Let me sit down over here. Thank you. All right. What can you share with us about your memories of Washougal High School?
Well, we came here when I was a sophomore, and we just continued and we grew and had a good time.
About how many graduates did you have back then? Do you remember?
There was probably about 50-some.
50-some. Things have changed a little bit, haven't they?
They sure have.
Yeah. So have you been in town the whole time then since graduating?
Always lived here.
What do you think about how things have changed in Camas and Washougal in the area?
They have really changed, yes.
How would you explain how it's different from when you grew up?
Well, there's a lot more people here. And it's really grown.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It was nice talking to you. Thank you. All right. Now, we're going to talk to someone that I'm familiar with, Mr. And I probably don't have to sit down. I'm going to make you stand up. This is Dave Cox. He was actually the assistant principal when we were here. Of course, I never got in trouble, so I never really had much communication with you at all during those years. But Dave came back to Washougal High School, actually to the district, right after graduating, and you served your whole career here in the district, didn't you? Great. Yeah. So, what are some of your vivid memories about Washougal High School and during, I guess, 3 decades you were here?
Well, first of all, I went to school at Eastern, and the activities and things that we had at the school was, when I was a student, actually bode me well for the study habits and things I needed at Eastern. And you call them the Eagles. They were the Savages when I went.
I know, they had those little tomahawks and all the bricks. They had to grind all those off when they changed the name.
Yes. And
ways down from Appleby. And our athletic field was actually between that building and Jimmy Middle School. It had a track around it, and we had our practices there. And I recall that they stacked wood alongside of the building back there because there was an old wood stove furnace that building was heated with. And from there, then we went to Jim Guard where all of our showering and basketball games, because that was the gymnasium. And of course, then they put in a new football field that was down on B Street, and they had lights, and so well, we could play at night then. So that was a little different. But in teaching, I started out teaching drafting in woodshop, and I got to Washougal because John Fishback came to Spokane, and then they had what's called the Inland Empire, in which the superintendents from all over the area, both Idaho, Washington, and Oregon, would go to a hotel there, and then the students from the various colleges would go there for their interviews. And I was prime draft date when I ended up graduating, because I had a student deferment at the time that I started school, and I had that student deferment until I graduated, and then I went to 1A, and they wanted me to enlist, but I thought, well, I'm going to go in the Air Force. If I enlisted, they didn't have any openings then. So anyway, at the Inland Empire, I noticed that John Fishback, our local superintendent, was there to interview students. And I just went in more or less to say hello, because I was interviewing some other places. And he asked me if I had a job yet, and I said, no, I interviewed in Portland, and they weren't interested because of my draft status. And they just knew that I was going to get picked off, and so they didn't want to take the chance. So Mr. Fishback said, well, I have a shop teacher that wants to go into administration, and so I can move him to administrative elementary job, and then you can come down and teach woodshop and drafting. And that was my major in college, was industrial arts. And so that's how I ended up in Washougal.
Right back where you started.
Where I started.
That's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, now I want to talk to Sheila Good. Hope I got that right. Great. Class of 1964. So, can you please stand up? Now, I understand you were the exchange student here in 1960.
I was. I came here on the American Field Service Scholarship. And if my voice is trembling, it's because as I thought about what I want to say today, there are so many memories, and I'd like you to get a little emotional.
Well, I've got to believe there's a boy involved if you stay here. Am I right?
There it is. But first, I want to say how honored I am to be included in the 4 illustrious alumni. But there are so many of you over here. I really consider this an honor. And of course, I would not be standing here today if it was not for that American Field Service Scholarship. And I don't know what gods chose my placement for me in New York, because I was way over in India, and you were here in Washougal, but whatever match they made couldn't have been perfect.
I think it's okay.
And the boy came much later. I want to say to you that from the moment I stepped off the plane, and I know you will remember this, all of you who are here, do you remember you were all there at the old Portland airport to greet me and bring me into Washougal? There was a whole bunch of them. There were other exchange students on that plane. Nobody else had a reception the way I did. It was only Washougal.
So you stayed here and
I stayed here for the year, and that was the saddest one. And in my young life, I was only 17. In my young life, that was the saddest year, because that was the year President Kennedy was shot. So I have that vivid memory. But anyway, it was also the year that Washougal had no snow, so to get to your question about the boy. There was no snow in Washougal. And where I lived in India, I didn't see snow. I mean, up north, there is a lot of snow in the Himalayas. So I knew by coming to the US, I would see snow, I would have snowball fights, well, it was nothing. And you know, a school is always a reflection of the community. It really, really is. Well, the community was very generous. I have never, ever seen so much generosity come to this stranger from India, from the entire community, and of course, the students. So my husband, who was a student, heard how upset I was and sad that I had not seen any snow. And in true Washougal spirit, he didn't think that was a problem at all. And without saying anything to me, because we were both very shy, he took a friend of his and his father's truck up into the hills, filled the whole back end of it with snow, came back to town, called my host mother, and asked for permission. This is how it was done then, you remember, to come with the snow so that I could see, feel snow, and have my snowball fight. And I have to say that the first snowball I threw was at my husband. I didn't know it then.
all right. Let's see here. Finally, this is easy, I get it right. Looks like we're close to wrapping things up, but I'm going to introduce the Washougal School District Superintendent, Dawn Tarzian.
What an honor to be here in front of all of you, and I got to tell you that after having been superintendent here in Washougal for 3 years, almost 3 years now, until this event, I was feeling relatively settled and like I'd been here for a while, and you have all taken that from me. But I will share with you one of my reasons for seeking out an opportunity to work in a community like Washougal has to do with a strong sense of community and events just like this one that reflects how deep the roots in this community go. Being a superintendent, not unlike any job in public education, is not an easy one. And from time to time, you could find me complaining about how hard my job is. So I want to share with you that this event has helped me tremendously, because I have decided that this is probably the best time to be superintendent of Washougal. Why, just tonight, I learned that in that locker room that's downstairs still in Hathaway, there was a hole that was discovered in the wall between the girls' locker room and the boys' locker room, and that there were girls small enough to squeeze through that hole, go into the equipment basket, and to peer at whatever might be going on in the boys' locker room. Before one of you raises your hand, I do not want to know if that person is present. The other thing I learned is there used to be a fight song that started out like this: beer, 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 beer. And when I said, no, we do not use that fight song any longer, the whole song was recited, which I am very suspicious many in this room remember. But there's even a stanza about heading down to the liquor store to replenish supplies. So, when I first arrived in Washougal, I felt it was very important to spend a little time learning more about the community, especially knowing that the roots are deep. And so I spent time that first year meeting with community groups to find the answer to these three questions. What is it that we want our students to know and be able to do when they graduate from our high school? What kind of experiences do we want them to have while they're here? And what's our district culture? What's our school culture like now? And what does it need to be in the future? The number one answer I heard, I don't think will surprise anyone in the room, and that had to do with a strong academic foundation. The Principal Hansen shared today that his staff was up to receive an award. What he didn't share was that award that Washougal High School received places it in the top 10% of high schools in the state. An incredible. I'm proud to share with you that that award of extreme progress, I believe, will be given to more than just two of Washougal School, because Cape also received one. I think we'll see many other schools receiving it, because the achievement of kids across this district is up at just about every grade level and in every subject as a result of the hard work and dedication of the staff that's here now. The other thing I heard in this community was that while test scores are important, it's not the whole purpose of education. I heard about how important it is for students to find out what they're passionate about while they're in school, to find out where their talents are, what they're really good at doing. And I think watching the X-Tech sing here is just a small piece of evidence for you that what was going on years ago in terms of clubs and interests and developing those things in students is still strong in our school. Wayne, I spotted in the yearbook the, what was it, the Tech TV Club? Yeah. And I thought to myself, yeah, I remember that club. The kids would laugh as it was a TV club. But Wayne is such a great example of so many of you in the room that as a result of the clubs and activities, whether they were sports, world languages, you found what you were good at and what you really wanted to do. And it led a pathway to your future. Those kinds of learning experiences are still going on here. As a matter of fact, our jazz band competed in the Portland Jazz Festival just 3 weeks ago. And they took first place for a high school our size. There's more. They traveled all the way down to Anaheim over spring break with the Wind Ensemble. And there at the Heritage Festival, they competed against 80 schools across this nation. They again took first place. So the last thing I heard in the community was make sure that what kids are learning in the high school and the schools in Washougal is practical. Make sure that they're learning those skills that they're going to need when they get out of high school. Things like time management, fiscal management, the importance of civic engagement. These are all things that were communicated to me and that we are working on across this system to assure that our kids have those kinds of skills in addition to the academic ones. You know, as I look across the room here and having met many of you as you came in and others of you learning about you through the stories you sent in or by having the advantage of having worked here and to hear stories about former graduates from family members. I know surrounding me in this room are very successful business owners. I see architects and engineers, builders, teachers, writers, artists, broadcasters. You have set the bar high, and the weight and responsibility I feel as superintendent to assure that future generations leave this system with the same quality of education and the same great experiences that you've had are on my mind regularly. So what I would share with you in closing is that as I walk these halls, your presence is here every day. You have built an incredible foundation, and it still supports the kids that are being educated today. So thank you for that, and thank you for your continued support of the kids that we're serving.
Thank you, Dawn. Terrific message there. And just in closing here, so many great people and familiar faces here. So let's take some time after this is all done to kind of mingle a little bit. There's some refreshments over here. There's also some DVDs set up. And yes. Right over there, DVDs. So was there something else I'm missing? Oh, okay. So we're going to do alma mater then. All right, let's go with the alma mater. I was a little ahead of the program. Sorry about that.
The words are on your program.
Okay, there we go. Great job, guys. That's terrific. Sounded great. And as I was saying, the DVDs of this program are available over there. You can sign up for them over there. Also, over by the Counseling Center, they've set up a camera. There'll be a camera set up where you can share some of your memories. So maybe think of a couple of special memories from your experience here at Washougal High School and go share them with everybody. And again, in closing, I just want to thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be back here, and go Panthers!